Hello everyone, today Shakun Batra, one of India's top film directors, will be joining us on 95.3 FM Harvard Radio Broadcasting. So far, he has co-written and directed 2 Hindi films, his first film Main Aur Ekk Tu, released in 2012, and his second film, the critically acclaimed and commercially successful Kapoor and Sons, released in 2016. Over the years, he's received several awards, including the Best Story Award at the 2016 Filmfare Awards. He's regarded for bringing a sense of complexity, sensitivity, and realism to Indian stories on film. To get started, can you tell us where you're calling in from today?
Yeah, hi, Arkirat. Thanks for having me here. I am in Mumbai, currently prepping my next film and excited to be on the interview with you.
Awesome. So I wanted to start this conversation with your early life. You were born and brought up in New Delhi, India. You went to St. Stephen's College. I wanted to know more about these early years and how they shaped your identity and maybe even led to your interest in the arts.
Right. To be honest, I never really thought that I'd be a filmmaker. I had no clue how movies are made, especially in Delhi. Especially at the time when I was growing up, there was no filming. So, my understanding of film was purely by watching Indian mainstream cinema. It's only in college when a friend of mine was watching a lot of foreign films, and I was into photography. And I really thought I'd be a photographer, and while exploring photography, I started to take a keen interest in cinematography and how movies are shot. And I was really, to be honest, I was just trying to run away from family business because it was, my parents, my family business was a mosquito repellent. So, you can imagine how exciting that could be.
Yeah.
So I went to the office a few times and I realized that wasn't meant for me. And I would have, to be honest, taken any next best thing to kind of get onto. And at that time, because I was into photography, I decided to go to film school. And went to film school, and that's where I really, film school opened a whole new world for me of movies, of storytelling, of directors and movies I'd never heard of or seen before, and I just connected immediately. And especially once I started watching Woody Allen films, it felt like all those films were meant for me. They somehow connected so deeply with me that I felt the need to kind of do something similar.
Yeah.
And then, of course, from there, it was just a journey of learning how to do it, learning the craft, learning the tools, and coming back, the hustle, the learning how to kind of survive in the city, get to a point where people can take you seriously to make a film, and all of that. So it's been exciting. It's been really great. And I'm so glad that I stumbled upon something that I so truly love.
Yeah, I think circling back to your initial interest in photography, were there any particular themes or subjects you were drawn to when you started off?
Yeah, I was mostly into kind of reportage, journalistic,
Okay.
photography. Obviously there was the regular Henrique Bresson, Salgado, and those photographers, Steve McCurry, to kind of begin with. But then, I started kind of just taking time out, watching a lot of photographers on Magnum, following a lot of
Yeah.
websites, they're buying different books in photography. I also used to really enjoy wildlife photography, but I somehow realized it wasn't meant for me. I didn't have the right temperament, or to be honest, the right body type to be kind of out there doing such hard wildlife photography. So, cinematography felt like something that I connected to equally well. And I think it's the camera, man. It's the camera. Once I see the camera, once I just feel connected with it. It's your instrument. And once that happened, there since then I've never had, to be honest. I know that some people wake up questioning if they're doing if what they're doing is really meant for them. I have a lot of investment banker friends, engineers, and they go through this crisis of, is this what they really want to do? To be honest, ever since I got out of film school, I've never had that question. And I'm just, to be honest, I'm thankful that I can at least wake up knowing that I
Yeah,
like what I do. You know what I mean? And I think that's
for
such a
sure.
huge thing in someone's life, because to be honest, I enjoy. I come from a business family. I think there's part of it ingrained in me. and I understand strategy at a very basic level.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I could have done it if it wasn't connected to the films or something creative like this.
So after college, you were interested in photography, and then you decided to attend Vancouver Film School. How did that end up happening, and why were you interested specifically, I guess, in Vancouver?
Well, it might sound very shallow, but I just wanted to get away from home, man. I, I mean, I don't know if you've gone through that kind of, your quarter life crisis of like trying to get away and trying to
Yeah.
find what you like and what you love.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of a coming of age. I just wasn't happy in the city. I felt like I needed more exposure. I needed to see something beyond what I knew. And somehow the idea of film school felt like it would be a whole different world for me. It'd be something so
Mm-hmm.
new and fresh that it seemed so exciting. And I'm glad that it turned out to be as good or even better than I imagined, because it could
Mm-hmm.
have been something that I didn't like, I didn't connect with, and that would have been a whole different story. But yeah, I was just going through some kind of a crisis, man. I wasn't happy in the city. I wasn't connecting with a lot of things that were happening around me, and I needed to just kind of be able to breathe. And the
Mm-hmm.
film school felt like that was the place for me.
Yeah. And was there a reason you chose Vancouver in
Uh,
particular?
well, again, there's a funny story behind it, which is that uh, I had applied. I was actually going to go to business school in the US
Oh,
before I
wow.
thought of film seriously. As I said, business is the next thing that seemed possible for me. I was an account
Mm-hmm.
student. I was a national scholar in accounts. I was, the government wanted to pay for my college for if I
Oh,
went into
wow.
accounts and became a CA or something. And it felt
Mm-hmm.
like the thing to do at the time, the rational thing to do. But I applied for a visa to go to Temple University in Philadelphia, and I had scholarship there. But my visa got rejected twice, so I could not apply for a US visa for another 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
And and Canada was the next best option for me,
Mm-hmm.
or Europe. So I'd heard good things about Vancouver, and it felt, to be honest, I was just looking at the city pictures, and I was like, this city is so good, I gotta get away.
Yeah.
And yeah. I mean, it was all really like juvenile decisions, but they paid off so well,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I've really got just the universe to thank for that. I don't know what else to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. And how did your family respond to this decision? Were they on board with you moving to Vancouver?
No, not entirely, to be honest. I mean, I don't know, Harkirat, if you spent time in a conservative Punjabi family, but they're very much a pro
Mm-hmm.
education, office,
Yeah.
go to work, come back home. So it was that kind of a family, and they were very, very scared. They were really worried, they were
Mm-hmm.
concerned, and in fact, when my grandmother had never really even seen more than one film, so when they told my grandmother that I wanted to be a cameraman because that's what I wanted to be at that time,
Mm-hmm.
she thought that I wanted to shoot weddings because that's the only place she had seen cameramen.
Yeah.
So it was a shock to them, but they
Mm-hmm.
eased into it, and my mother was kind of supportive, and I actually had decided I'd put my foot down, and I'd realized that if I had to fight for it, I was going to fight for it. So eventually, it all worked out. I went to film school, had a great time, made some
Mm-hmm.
great friends, opened up into this whole idea of filmmaking, and yeah, I mean, it's probably the most pivotal point in my life. So I'm glad it all worked out.
Yeah. And then, so you went to study cinematography, but you ended up actually developing an interest in direction. How did that change kind of happen?
It was kind of more organic and gradual.
Mm-hmm.
It's once I came back to India, I was open to assisting either cameraman or a filmmaker because I'd been to film school. I understood a
Mm-hmm.
broader sense of things.
Yeah.
And I happened to get a job with Farhan Akhtar, who made Dil Chahta Hai, which is one of the defining movies of of India in the early
Definitely.
2000s.
Yeah.
And that was a movie that I had kind of really had made me take the decision of filmmaking seriously. So once I came back and I realized I was getting a chance to work with him, it
Mm-hmm.
was a no-brainer. I just wanted to work closest to the person I'd admired. And
Mm-hmm.
once I started working with him, I realized that even though my key interest was visuals, that
Hmm.
you could tell a story visually, even if you're a director. And in fact, if you're a director, you have more control on everything and not just the visuals. You know, you are editing it, so you know how much of the visual you really want to use. So it felt like the right thing to do at the time. You know, it felt like, sure, why not? Why not direct? If I want to do visual storytelling, why stop myself at cinematography? And at that point, I told myself, okay, I'm going to give it a try, give it a shot. And I started, being a little more intrigued with storytelling, writing, and slowly, kind of that took shape. And I was lucky, man. I was fortunate. I mean, there are a lot of people who come to the city to become filmmakers.
Hmm.
Very few get a chance, and then out of those, very few kind of end up having a career. So it worked out for me, so to say. And yeah, I'm just super glad that it all worked out.
Yeah. And so after this period, you obviously transitioned to making your own films. And in 2012, the romantic comedy Main Aur Ekk Tu was your screenwriting and directorial debut. So first of all, I'm curious, what was the inspiration behind telling this particular story?
All right, so my first film, first of all, I think one of the reasons that I went for a romantic comedy, I used to enjoy romantic comedies back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I was 25 when I was writing it. I was very much inspired by, at that time, I was madly in love with movies like, I mean, I still am. The Graduate, Annie Hall,
Mm-hmm.
Garden State. Those are the kind of movies I had truly loved. And at the time in India, romantic comedies was the staple movie diet.
Yeah.
If you think of, like, anything between early 2000 to 2010, 80% of the movies, mainstream movies, were romantic comedies.
Mm-hmm.
All our heroes, if you really look at it, are actually romantic heroes. Shah Rukh, Amir, back in the day, they were all doing romance, you
Yeah.
know? And it felt like that if I wrote a romantic comedy, the chances of it getting made were much easier. So,
Mm.
if you were to ask me to direct it today, I probably would. If you were to ask me to write it today, I probably won't. But back then, it felt like the right thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
and it paid off. I wrote a romantic comedy. I was also coming, as I said, my upbringing in Delhi, I felt very kind of stuck in the city. I felt suffocated, and then as I moved to film school in Bombay, I kind of felt like I could fly. I
Mm-hmm.
had wings, And that's really the story of Ek Main Aur Ek Tu. This kind of straight-jacketed guy who's been stuck in this kind of mold because his
Yeah.
parents wanted him to fit in a certain kind of society, and then he kind of breaks through with this help of this other woman. So that was kind of the feelings that I had gone through in my early 20s, and I was interested in kind of just exploring that, but
Mhm.
in the mold of slightly more mainstream filming. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's how it all turned into a story for my first film.
I'm also interested really in the writing process of your films because I feel, apart from the visual is really one of the strongest kind of tenets of your films is the writing. And I read into it, and so you write with your friend Ayesha DeVitre, and she is a writer, and she also happens to be your friend. So, tell me, I guess, how did you become friends, and how do you both collaborate when writing films?
Yeah, there's an even stranger story here, which is that Aisha is not just my friend and a writer. She actually is a hairstylist. She's actually one of the
Oh,
top
wow.
hairstylists in the she's one of the top hairstylists in the country. She works with all the movie stars, and she and I met on the sets of Jaane Tu, and she was a hairstylist. She was
Okay.
styling Imran's hair, and I happened to find her really funny. And she'd never written anything. I was kind of this kind of a kid trying to figure out how to write my first script. I met a bunch of writers, but they all gave me the same bull about, which I already knew from film school. Structure, three act, inciting
Mm-hmm.
incident. We got to do this. We got to move that. And I kind of had heard all that entire terminology, but I never felt like I connected with somebody at a deeper level. So Aisha
Mm-hmm.
and I had become really good friends, and she was one of the people who always had a story to tell about everybody she'd ever met. She'll always remember a story about somebody she'd met, and she could imitate people, and she could always remember an episode of somebody she'd met and their characteristic and their traits. And I was like, listen, man, I know you've never written anything. I think I can handle the overall structure. Why don't we give it a shot?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, also I was broke and had no money to pay anybody. So
Mm-hmm.
she jumped at the offer. We spent some time. To be honest, our first draft was absolutely crap, and I don't know where it is, but if I read it, I'll probably slit my wrist. But she and I then just kept working, and then
Mm-hmm.
got to a point where we were happy with it. And since then I've been very, very comfortable working with her, and because she has no filter, she's absolutely brutally honest to me. So when I write
Yeah.
something and she doesn't like it, she's always like, dude, this is absolutely shit, and you got to figure it out. So
Mm-hmm.
I think you need that kind of honesty, and that kind of person in the room with you who's not always going to filter out thoughts. uh,
Yeah.
and that works out really well between Aisha and I, and we work in a very ad hoc way. It's very, from an outside point of view, it could look very unprofessional because we sometimes just sitting and eating food and like talking random stuff, and then slowly we kind of start figuring out where it is going.
And so that brings us to Kapoor and Sons, your second film collaboration with Ayesha, and really one of my favorite Hindi films. So the film is about the dysfunctional Kapoor family reuniting where secrets and misunderstandings come to the fore. Again, tell me what inspired this particular story. Were there things you were already thinking about and they all kind of coalesced, or was it just something you wanted to tell?
Well, one of the things is that I grew up on family movies in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like if you can think of Hum Aapke Hain Kaun and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. And my
Yeah.
family never felt like one of those families. Those families felt so
Yeah.
good, and I was like, if that's the idea of family, I don't know what's going on with me.
Yeah.
And as I grew older, and I started to kind of reflect back on my life, I
Mm-hmm.
actually realized that idea of family was completely, not completely, but was kind of false. And
Yeah.
it was kind of for this aspirational idea of family that you want, but that's not a family, how a family is.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and that kind of was something that was playing on my mind. And then also I had just before this tried to write a story about a gay man coming out of the closet to his family,
Mm-hmm.
which eventually didn't turn out the way that I felt comfortable directing it. So then when I went back to trying and find what's the other thing that I should do, and I had this dysfunctional family idea where they all come back. It's a subgenre of the family movie called
Yeah.
the reunion film.
Mm-hmm.
Where people come back under the same roof with secrets in the past, and then shit starts to hit the ceiling. You see Celebration, or you see Monsoon Wedding, or you see Little Miss
Yeah.
Sunshine. There are a bunch of these. And I've always enjoyed that genre. And then I decided that this is the kind of milieu that I actually enjoy. And I was like, okay, why don't I try and do this and do it in a way where it's subversive, at least to the Indian film industry, where it's kind of trying
Hmm.
to take on things that haven't been done before, and also try and find a tone for it that felt more real and believable than
Hmm.
other movies that I'd seen.
Yeah.
So that was the journey. I was really interested in the tone and the texture and the milieu and how I wanted to kind of put it all together. And I also wanted to explore a very different visual scheme of things. As I said, my first film was very designed, and I wanted to
Yeah.
kind of find a way of shooting this. Uh, and so that kind of led me into kind of going further. And then I borrowed the story about the gay man coming out of the closet, uh, and I put that in this film. So every
Yeah.
character kind of had their own journey that they were following, and it was amalgamation of a bunch of different ideas that I had, and I'm really glad I went in this direction because it somehow also was cathartic for me. It really helped me kind of understand myself and resolve
Hmm.
some of the issues I've been dealing with my family and accepting them.
Hmm.
Um, and it kind of became a little more personal for me. So since then, I've become a big advocate and a fan of trying to use movies and storytelling as a tool to understand yourself and maybe even heal
Yeah.
heal yourself. And I really think I think movies can do that. It's done it to me, not just by making, sometimes by watching. It could be cathartic. You
Yeah,
could,
for sure.
the same reason you went to watch back in the day, the Greek tragedies, because
Hmm.
you kind of felt this purge of emotions. You kind of felt clean after you watched it because somebody else had lived the harder life on screen for you to feel those emotions, that cathartic experience. And I feel like that is also one of the things you can do with films is you can have actors take a journey on screen that makes the audience feel like they are going through it and feel cathartic at the end of it.
Yeah, and I also wanted to touch up on some of the themes in the film. Obviously, you mentioned homosexuality, infidelity, family, relationships, old age. I think all of them are dealt with immense sensitivity, realism, and respect, maybe for even the first time, or even a long time, I feel, in Hindi cinema. Were there any kind of books or films that you referred to that you used just in prepping for the film?
I think just reading Death of a Sales. I mean, I watched Death of a Salesman in New York with Philip Seymour Hoffman and Andrew
Uh-huh.
Garfield,
Wow.
and I'd seen the play
Hmm.
on VHS with Dustin Hoffman. And I don't know, it just always. I mean, even now when I watch it, it just hit me at a gut level at all times. And it is such an interesting story, which again deals with infidelity, deals with family, it deals with sibling rivalry at some level.
Yeah.
It deals with the complexity of being a parent to people who are not getting along. Uh, and
Hmm.
and I think all those things at a subconscious level were the kind of dynamics that I wanted to explore. Um, and as I said, I was also dealing with the way I grew up. I have two sisters. We had this kind of complex relationship where she felt like my mother was partial to me, and she never got her fair share. And so I just wanted to kind of put all these things because they were as I said, they were kind of personal, and I wanted to kind of find
Hmm.
that. And as I said, it's not that I knew all these things from the word go. These are things that became more and more clear to me as I was writing, and and slowly, they came to the forefront, and I knew that it was important for me to kind of graph these characters a certain way.
One of the things I often think about is uh, in between the time between making two films or between two projects, how do you keep yourself disciplined and not maybe question yourself? Are there moments where you just think, are you even on the right path? Is this happening? So, do you ever get restless? And how do you, I guess, cope or manage with that?
That's a great question to begin with, because I think the one thing they don't teach you in film school is how to deal with that. And that's the
Hmm.
one thing that you don't often read in interviews is the
Yeah.
anxiety and the restlessness that one has to go through between films.
Yeah.
Because it feels like every time you're making a film, you feel like this time I've understood it better, and next time I'll be able to do it more smoothly. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a funny thing. It's like you have to go through this dark tunnel every time. Every time
Yeah.
you finish a film, it's. I don't think there is a shorter route to kind of getting to the next. I mean, if there is, I haven't found it yet, and I hope I do. But I feel the anxiety, the restlessness, the feeling of am I is it over, and do I have it in me, do I have another one in me,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know will I be able to get it right this time? All those questions, man. I mean, um, if you had if we had spoken a year ago, I was very doubtful about where I was in life, because I was developing a massive project that didn't
Yeah.
take off. And all of a sudden I
Mm-hmm.
was lost. I was lost, and I was like, spent a year and a half on something that's not taking off. Do I have it in me to give it one more shot and find something else? Um,
Mm-hmm.
but also, I've realized that pressure is the one that eventually pushes you to kind of go out and do something. Sometimes when things get too comfortable, you don't end up. Um, I don't know. I think you don't end up. And I think now, I think I'm trying to find a balanced approach, like feel the pressure, but not get depressed. Um,
Yeah.
and I feel
Yeah.
like uh, I would like that, because I was very close to be honest, I was very close to kind of falling into the dark hole last year in
Mm.
November and December. And it took some doing, to be honest. It took me 3-4 months to constantly wake up and tell myself to be on my study table regardless of the outcome, and regardless of how much how much I wrote. I was like, I have to kind of be there and try my best. And it took me about 3-4 months before my anxiety started to subside a little bit, and I could see that there was light at the end of the tunnel. Uh,
Yeah.
to be honest, I still get restless. I still get anxiety every now and then. But it's manageable. It's not something that I can't work with. And also, then you start reading about other writers, and you realize that they all gone through the same fear. And there's this
Mm-hmm.
Neil Gaiman interview. I really think he is one of the brightest minds around, and he speaks so well. He makes you feel because he's such a genius and a legend. And when he talks about the vulnerability as a writer, and what he goes through, it makes you feel that if he's human, and if he goes through this, there's no way that that
Yeah.
you can surpass it. And I think that's the important thing, is to kind of not embrace, but be okay with that. Be okay with the restlessness, and know that that's part of the process. And there is no shortcut to it. So I think listening to Neil Gaiman, I heard his interviews like 2 or 3 different times at different points in my writing, and it always gave me the confidence to say, "Don't worry, go back to it again, go back to it again."
Mm-hmm.
And I think in any career, man. I mean, I'm sure you guys go through the same. It's like there are times where you just have to kind of get up and show up, get up and show up, get up and show up, and
Yeah.
hope it's gonna fall in place.
Yeah. And so, when do we get to see the next film? And can you tell us more about that?
Yes, my film gonna start. We're gonna start shooting in March,
Okay.
and it's gonna be releasing Feb 2021.
I know that you're co-producing this film. So, are you setting up a production house of your own? And if you are, is there kind of a vision? What kind of films you want to support, or what kind of content in general are you looking to create?
Right. So I really think we are. I think one thing that we miss in this country is what I call entertainment for grown-ups, or adult entertainment. I
Mm-hmm.
think we are still stuck in a lot of, at least till about 3-4 years ago. A lot of it is just entertainment for a younger audience, and is
Mm-hmm.
very pop driven. And I think now is a time when people are exploring more grown up, more adult kind of storytelling. And I think that's the
Yeah.
kind of stuff that I want to really back up, and stuff that is also sometimes cerebral. I think we've always shied away from cerebral stuff,
Yeah.
and cerebral automatically becomes art house, which I
Yeah.
don't always think is true. Look at the West. There's so much great content coming, which is meant for intelligent. It's also kind of it stimulates you,
Mm-hmm.
mentally. And
Yeah.
I think that's the direction that I want to go in. So yeah, I'm looking for stories. I'm looking for collaborators, but one step at a time. Right now, I think I have my own movie, my own career that is priority. I think I'm still very, very insignificant in the bigger scheme of things. And I need to kind of make sure that I've created a place for myself before I lose myself into this bigger picture. So definitely in the long run, I would like to kind of take my baby steps and encourage others and different kind of filmmaking through my
Mm-hmm.
production. But at this point, I just really want to solidify my career and my voice.
Makes sense. Cool. And we're really excited for that. Thank you so much. I personally am really looking forward to all the work you're going to do and continue to do.